This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Welcome to the Triple Option. Here's your host, Paul Catalina.
Welcome in. I don't know what to do with my hands today. I don't know why I was standing up like this, like I was about to Walter Cronkite some information to you. Ladies and gentlemen, the president. No, I was about to do that. I don't know why I'm doing that. Maybe it's because I'm so excited because my very dear friend Adam Winkler, who is now retired from the media, he did. You know what, Adam? You didn't Chipper Jones or Mariano Rivera this thing. I think you should have done a victory lap a little bit. You know, shown up at some events. Gotten a rocking chair or something. But you've moved on into the family business at Winkler PR there in Houston. But you have been on TV here in Waco. Let's hold on. Let me go in order. Monroe, Louisiana, right?
Yep.
Monroe, then Waco.
Then Waco, yep.
Then Austin.
Yep.
Then Norfolk, Virginia.
Yep.
Then Houston. Now out of the game and into PR, right?
Not wearing nearly as much makeup and not having nearly as terrible of a shift and hours. So yes, I am on what some would say the dark side, but I'm here with you. So whatever it took to make that happen for the first time since I've known you for a decade and a half now. I don't think we've ever co-hosted before, buddy.
No, and I remember when you were here, I tried to get you, and we could never even make it work out. Of just when a co-host was gone, like, hey, do you want to come in? And
well, you were also doing mornings back then, and that was before.
Yeah,
that was.
Yeah, no, you know what? This will make you feel good. So the first person who ever told me no for a morning show interview was Randy Galloway, and so Steve Fallon gave me his information, and I called him, and he was, and later on, I've gotten to be friends with him, through covering lots of things and Smokey, and I love the guy to death. Called me after I got fired, which is friend. Yeah. You have that media friend that's like, oh hell, son, I'm sorry about that. That sucks. It's all happened to all of us. It's a real son of a bitch, I'll tell you that, And so, but I was like, I called him, I was like, hey, I'd like to set up this interview. And it was before I knew how to pre-record things. It was very early on in my career, or that we had the capacity to do such a thing. Like, it was just, I was so young in the business. And I was like, well, the interview will be at 7:45 a.m. And he's like, oh, hell, Paul. I ain't getting up. Like, do you know what it's like being a sports writer? This is when he's still writing, and in a locker room, like in the Rangers locker room at 11:10 p.m., and all that stuff. Oh man, I ain't no sports writer gonna get up at 7:30 a.m. to take a call on a damn radio show. And he was being very he was being Randy Galloway, but I was like, oh. Wow. Well, that's disheartening. So,
if I don't even think it ever got to the point where you asked me to do it. You just knew, probably because of the extracurricular activities that, in which we both engaged back in the day, that you were like, yeah, I don't think this guy's good for 6 a.m.
I remember telling you the day that I moved to afternoons and how happy I was. I was like, hey, I'm going to be on afternoons now. And everybody's like, congratulations, you made it. You can not feel so guilty about being here till closing time now.
Yes.
Yeah. We used to shut them down here, Adam. And our lives are so far from that now. You were here last summer for my wedding reception, and I think we were, even though it was the first time we'd all been in the same room in just under a decade, really just under a decade. We've seen each other in pockets, maybe three of us at a time, but our whole group, first time we're together in forever. And I think we did leave at 10:30 p.m.
We were trying hard to pull back the glory days, and none of us had it. It was one of those where nobody wanted to be the first to be like, I'm tired. but as soon as the first one was, it was like, all right, well, See you later.
Yeah. I was like, oh, thank God. We have like, there's a leader here. This is the president of the group for now. Yeah. This is the one who's made the executive decision. And now we can all like, if you stay later, it's just because like, oh, I got to get the bill, like that's it. Like mine came later, but, but so it's great to have you. And so even though you're not currently a media member, you're still well-versed in sports and college sports and the NFL. You've covered just about everything, right? Like maybe not the Olympics, but just about everything.
Yes. And most of that is thanks to, the path in Texas. I mean, being in Waco for 3 years, being in Austin for 6 years, being in Houston for 3 years. And obviously I grew up in Houston. I went to school in Georgetown. So, I have lived this long before I was being paid to live it. And even though I'm no longer on TV or your phone or wherever people get their news these days, still like to stay plugged in and not as plugged in as you, buddy, because you're being paid to do it. But I appreciate you giving me the platform to chop it up and talk a little shop.
Well, what I found is people get out of the business and they like that they can maybe like just dip their toe in it once in a while and feel like yourself again. I mean, not that you're not, but like you have Saturday mornings. I remember texting you the first day that you were out of media and you were like, I'm at Lowe's.
we were going to a baby shower. Yeah. Who knew that you could drink at baby showers? I didn't because I never been to one.
Yeah. You're like, oh, wow. I'm at Lowe's on a Saturday morning. And they're like, well, I mean, that's what everybody does. Like, you don't even think, but I had the same feeling the first Friday night that in September that I went to, like last year, the first year not doing high school football. And I took Amanda out to 135 Prime, which is a really nice steakhouse here to kind of celebrate it. And which is ironically less than a mile away from where I would have been anyway. Yeah. So it's like I couldn't get that far away in case I had to like hold the steak. I got to run down there.
Yeah, the Geo fence was still in play.
Yeah. And but it was like the weirdest thing to be like home at 8:30 p.m. watching television and going, oh, there's a college football game on tonight. What do you know about that? Let's watch that.
Yeah. The first Friday night is coming for me. What are we 2 weeks out? And that'll be another, kind of reality check. It's like, wait a second, what's that noise? Oh wait, I can hear the stadiums, and I don't have to go and do live shots or run the highlights. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that because I know how refreshing it was for you, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to start out talking about the CFP debuts this year, and the Group of Five is very wisely making sure that they have a backup plan for, what could be 2 years from now, the CFP going, I mean, thanks for your two teams you put in. Like those games could have been fun, or they might be, but if they're both blowouts, that's going to be another excuse because from what we know of the leaders of college football, you don't need a legitimate reason to get somebody out. You just need everybody to agree on your nonsense. So, I'm just pulling a random situation out of the air here. Your quarterback could be hurt, but you could still be undefeated, and that keeps you out of the playoffs.
Totally random. Totally random.
I mean, I don't think that's ever. I don't know if that's really ever happened or been discussed in the room. Farcical. I mean, empirically, I would have to not say anything, but but like those excuses will come, so they better have a backup plan. And if the backup plan to me is college football's NIT, like Gloria Navarez said it in the interview with Ross Dellinger, heck, I mean, I think that'd be better. Like, I think the bowl system is very tired, and if you could shoot some life into the postseason and then still have those bowls in different playoff scenarios, I think that would be fine to me. And why not take some of the lesser bowls and make that the same thing you're doing with the CFP and do it for the G5.
And you think the bowl system is tired now. Paul, wait till we see what these non-playoff bowls look like this season. I mean, it's going to have zero interest. It's obviously anybody who's worth anything player-wise is probably going to opt out. But the bowls are just not going to have any cachet. And to your point, I would love to see those bowls who are taking hits sponsorship wise, viewership wise, become part of an NIT for a group of 5. But man, if the group of 5 gets left out of this 12-team playoff starting in 2026, is that not the beginning of the end of group of 5 football? I mean, we've already got the biggest separation between the haves and the have-nots we've ever seen. I mean, one of those quotes in the Ross Dellinger article was, these group of 5 teams, they feel like they're a minor league system for the Power 4. And look at mid-major college basketball. Like, we don't lock in on mid-major college basketball until we get to March Madness, because we know there's a chance we could see a VCU or a George Mason or somebody make a run. If you're no longer even giving those programs the chance to have a chance to make a Cinderella run, why would anybody go and play there? Why would anybody shell money into their NIL or their facilities? I just think that's the beginning of the end. So the pressure on the group of 5 team that makes it this year it's not only a matter of trying to win, Paul, it's don't get blown out. Don't embarrass our TV product. Don't screw up the ratings lead in to the next game, because we know you're going to be the first game of the day.
Yeah. No, I mean, any excuse that they've had, they will use. And anything they can sell, just barely, because, again, the scenario I described before that happened to Florida State, they didn't really sell that hard. I mean, it was just like, well, this is why we did it. And then people, like, they had a few shills that were like, look, you just can't. I mean, this is a different thing. You're like, man, you've played in games without your starting quarterback before and won? Like, what are you talking about? Like, what are we doing here? And so they don't need much. And if they decide that, having Boise State or Memphis or Tulane or Liberty in that game is going to be, bad for business, then they'll move on. They'll find their little lane of like, okay, all we need is 51% of the people to approve of this, which the problem is that the Power 2 will do what they want, and then the other 2 will have to go with them because they're going to benefit by having the group of 5 not in it, because that's one more spot that's available for them, even though they still might not get it. Like, it's just more likelihood. But if you give one more playoff spot to the Big Ten and SEC, they're likely going to take it. But also the same holds true for the ACC and Big 12. Well, they'll be like, well, we'll take it. Like, we'll take that advantage. And, sorry about your luck, guys. But, this is not, this is just how it's going to be. And they don't have it's every man for himself.
And let's also not forget ESPN, they help run the show too. So all you're going to need is somebody to come out and say Boise State or UNLV took the spot of, I don't know, Auburn, USC, like some brand team that was 9-3 that was just hovering around 11, 12, 13 in the poll, but didn't get the spot because of the way it's set up with the group of 5. ESPN is now the sole rights holder of the SEC. If it's one of those name brand SEC teams, say it's Ole Miss or somebody like that, you're telling me that those conversations behind closed doors aren't going to start and be like, hey, let's look at some of the numbers that some of these blue blood programs put up in that prime window on ABC or ESPN on a Saturday afternoon and compare it to what Liberty drew in the 12 versus 5 game. Mm-hmm. To your point, Paul, it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, and they want to keep that spot, but they do have to. And look, being able to do both, I think, is great. Like, it's not hurting anybody. For them to have another playoff and another trophy and people to go, and the thing that bothers me about all of this is that there's good football everywhere. There's really good football everywhere. And, you've covered, I'm sure, a Sam Houston State, Stephen F. Austin game that was fantastic. Mm-hmm. FCS playoff games I've been to, really fun to watch. I've been to some Division III UMHB games. Fun. Yep. Football is fun to watch if it's good football. And, if you can separate it off and try to make your own thing, because I don't think there's a whole lot more money out there for them otherwise than creating this thing and getting a sponsor and a TV partner who's going to pour money into it. Maybe it's the CW. Maybe it's TNT. Who knows? Who that's going to be, but their live sports are valuable, so they would have some value in that, especially like if they're not in the CFP. That's going to unfetter them from a lot of things and say, okay, well, we have to cut our own path here, and let's see how much money. Like maybe they take the Apple deal. Funny enough, I met a guy at the Big 12 Media Days that was with the Pac-12 networks, and he's like, look, I think like he was in production. He's like, in my end, it was a great deal. It just the coaches didn't want it because they had to be on regular TV. So
look at where that lack of foresight has us. I think you say about FCS playoff games, like there's got to be somebody smart who help make that what it is, who can have an honest conversation with these group of 5 programs, conferences. Like the FCS playoffs is still craveable. Like there's a reason those games are on TV. There's a reason that the national championship sells out. And maybe it's because it's not billed as the NIT. Maybe it's because it is a true national championship at a different level. And maybe it will take the separation of the FBS Power 4 and, the group of 5 and have them play for a true national championship instead of, hey, this is the, 69th best team, like some try and say the NIT is. But you have to give these coaches, these families, these players, these boosters something to play for at the group of 5 level. I mean, I'm talking to you right now, not far from Rice. Like, what is that athletic department going through right now? Like, you're a world-class academic institution, but I mean, what is your future? You're now just a year away from not even having U of H on your schedule because the Bayou Bucket is going away because of realignment. Like, how are you going to recruit a kid to come and play for your school outside of the opportunity to get a world-class education? If he wants to play high-level college football and pursue a championship, that might not be the place for him anymore, which is sad for a lot of people over there who have tried so hard through the years to sustain that level of excellence and budget and attendance. Because as you know, Paul, it's not easy to make it right on the fringes of major D1.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's very, very tough. And to get to that point where an App State or a Boise State or a Memphis is right now, USF is kind of knocking on the door too. We actually are interviewing the AD for USF tomorrow, early on in the show, and they've done. And as somebody who is from down there, if you had told me when I lived there that one day USF will have done everything they need to do to become a major college athletic program, and like that they're now in AAU school and all that stuff, would have been like, no, man, I was over at their gym and 3 of their different, student employees tried to sell me weed. So, no, I think, oh, you don't want Dennis's weed. No, I'm good. I'm good. No, come on. Dennis mine's better. That's the kind of thing.
See, but now they have other money-making ventures, which clearly has them in a different circle.
So yeah, they're in the AAU before several schools in Florida are that were kind of ahead of them 20 years ago. They're in a big major market. They're about to build their own on-campus stadium, so they're not playing in Raymond James anymore, and they have their own thing. So they're doing all those things, but they're doing them 2 years too late. Yep. And that's what's they're gonna say well, sorry about your luck. You're out because you weren't, you didn't make a deal with somebody 110 years ago that's followed you along all this time. So yeah, it's silly that it's silly that anything is the same way it was 100 years ago just because it was that way 100 years ago. Yeah. And but we still have that in modern college athletics. Some things are way better. Adam, I know that, I know it's different for you because you're at Southwestern, but as a baseball guy, now, baseball scholarships are going to be full scholarships. I mean,
which is mind blowing to anybody who, I'm old enough. I mean, I was kind of the start of the select baseball era here in Houston. You know, a couple years before high school started, like we were playing fall ball at softball facilities because that was the start of the select ball era. And the narrative always was, hey, you know, it's tough. It's only 11.7 scholarships in college baseball. Now you could have potentially up to 35, but as anybody who knows, that's only going to be a matter of if your school can invest in it. It's like right now, like, you know, the 11.7, there's a lot of HBCUs, Paul, that can't even afford to do 11.7 right now. So it has never been more about the haves versus the have-nots. And I mean, we could spend 4 hours on this subject. If you've got a booster, are you going to invest it into scholarships, or are you going to have to ask them to put it into NIL to try and re-recruit your guys or get actual talent in? Like, it is, everything is constantly evolving, and it is certainly mind-boggling. A lot of it is good because it's good for the student athletes, it's good for the families, but man, if you're hell-bent on tradition and the way things used to be, I feel sorry for you because there ain't much like that.
You've got to let it go. You just have to let it go. And as someone who I'm sure has seen Frozen more times than you want to,
yes,
you probably started singing that song in your head. Adam has 2 kids and 1 on the way.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. You're like, because you've added another kid into this mix, your like repetitive Disney movie thing is now restarted.
Yeah. So
yeah.
It
down
is,
the line, like, you know, whatever Connor and Quinn like, you know, new baby's gonna probably like too, but then the new baby's gonna have something that they like that they don't. So now you've got another one in the cycle.
Well, I mean, from everything we've read about good parenting, it's just give each kid their own screen, right? That's what you're supposed to do. That's how that is. Isn't that how you're supposed to solve problems? That's in the handbook, right? But it's interesting you said that. So our daughter Quinny, she was born 3 weeks before the pandemic. So like she came into the world and then the world shut down. So a lot of her favorite movies, Paul, I've got like major PTSD because it just reminds me of sitting in our house in Virginia and not being able to go anywhere. And it's just Moana and it's just Coco. And it's just like, sweetheart, I know you love those movies, but daddy needs to stop hearing that song because he wasn't in a good place in his life.
Yeah. You hear a song from Moana and you're like, I've got to go cry for a minute. Not happy tears either.
No.
Yeah. All right. When we come back, Adam covered the Texas Longhorns for 8 years?
I mean, yeah, nine, and then last year too. So we'll call it a decade. Yeah,
a decade of covering the Longhorns. So he saw them at their peak of Big 12 interference and on into the SEC. You know, those announcements and all that you have covered. I'm curious your thoughts on the new SEC and what that means, because it was funny because when you went down to Austin, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, you know, like, hey, this is a big step up, which it was. It was right before the Longhorn Network started. And then the Longhorn Network started, and it made your job infinitely harder.
Yes.
Like a job that was, it's already hard and it's already time consuming. The Longhorn Network comes along and is like, oh, by the way, we hate you. Yeah. We don't care about you. You're nothing to us. You're just in our way. And
we'll never need you again. But hey, thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. When we come back, we'll talk about the new SEC. This is the Triple Option on 365 Sports.
Fantasy Sports EVO, the next evolution of daily fantasy sports. Tired of traditional fantasy sports where you spend hours upon hours studying individual players? EVO's unique team-based platform makes it easier than ever for all sports fans to play. No need to know individual players. Just choose your contest, select your teams, and enjoy the game. Whether you access our website from a desktop, mobile device, or the app, the experience is the same. EVO is for all sports fans. Join Fantasy Sports EVO and experience the evolution.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Welcome to the Triple Option. Here's your host, Paul Catalina.
Welcome back, Adam Winkler alongside. And I want to say a media outlet, but you don't have one now because you're, again, retired. And I mean, you're not retired from working. You still have to do that. But.
The TV industry wasn't that good, buddy. We had a good 20-year run, but no, I am now the director of media strategy and storytelling for Winkler Public Relations here in Houston, founded back in 2003, and so still telling stories, which is what I think I do best. It's what I love to do. Not doing as much on the sports side. So which is why I'm especially grateful for you having me on to talk a little sports after I lived it for 2 decades.
Here's the deal: if this gets big enough, I'm coming. You'll be my PR guy. That's what we'll do. So that way you can expand that in. And let's face it, I'm probably going to say something one time that I'm going to need a press release about.
You're going to need a holding statement.
Yeah. No, Paul does not really feel that way about dolphins. It was just a joke. He doesn't want anything bad to happen to dolphins. All sea creatures are friends of Paul.
You can depend on me, buddy. I'll do your damage control.
Our sincerest apologies to the good folks at U.S. Dolphin Rescue. We did not mean to offend. But you covered Texas for a long time. You covered the Big 12 for a long time. You covered the SEC as well with covering A&M when you got back to Houston. And then the world's changed. So now we're in the new SEC. A&M and Texas is back. I could not be more thrilled for that. And I love that both sides are pretending like they don't think it's that big of a deal. And it's a huge – they both think it's a huge deal. But they're both trying to be like, it's not a – whatever. We didn't really miss playing each other. Yes, you did. You both sing about each other in your songs. Like, you didn't change the songs when you left. You kept doing it, so you missed each other. As much as you hate each other, you love playing, you love ragging on each other. Let's make it real. Let's stop this charade that's, we don't care about playing them. It's not, whatevs. Like, that was their whole vibe about it. Now it's on, it's back. Plus, Texas, who unilaterally made decisions in the Big 12, will not get to do that now. And I'm curious to know if you think they'll try, or if joining the SEC means that they've admitted to themselves, let's not swim upstream anymore.
First of all, I want to go back to the UT A&M thing, because I grew up here in Houston. I was not born here. I was born in New Orleans. My entire extended family is from New Orleans. They're LSU fans. So we came to Houston when I was very young. And the UT A&M rivalry was just it was new to me. I had friends on both sides. I've never had a dog in the fight. I played Division III baseball. My brother went to Auburn. So there's no rivalry. I don't know. I just don't understand why we can't admit that it means a lot to a lot of people. I understand why the players can't say, it's a bigger game than playing Vanderbilt. But why, to your point, why can't you say, yeah, I'm really excited to get to do this again, not because of anything that the player would be admitting, but because you know how much it means to your high school math teacher or your college professor who was there when, the year of the bonfire tragedy or the Ricky run, like all of those memories that so many of us grew up with. Like, when did it become, uncouth to say that something means something to a lot of people and therefore it means a lot to me? Like, I don't know why that's a bad thing. So I absolutely am with you. Those two schools need to play each other. It means so much to so many people in our state. It's relevant nationally. I mean, when I was on the East Coast for 5 years, people knew UT and A&M, and people thought it was foolish that they didn't play each other. So that, for one, is a reason I'm glad that UT is in the SEC. I am also fascinated, not so much to see how UT's decision making will go, because I think Chris Del Conte, I think he knows exactly what he's getting into. I think he has a good enough relationship with enough of those SEC ADs and school presidents that they're gonna be good soldiers for a while, and they have gotten a lot of what they've wanted, with the exit strategy out of the Big 12 into the SEC. I'm fascinated to see how UT fans make this adjustment into the SEC, where UT's brand is still UT's brand, but even like the small stuff, like being referred to as UT, is not going to be okay in the SEC, because Tennessee has been already, handed that privilege, if you will. And just the constant, as somebody who worked in Austin and obviously worked in Waco, like SEC fans, the amount of attention and energy and emotion that they put into everything athletics, it's on a different level than I've seen from UT fans. UT fans, yeah, they're great, but I mean, they're not SEC fans, and they haven't been. And I don't think A&M fans could claim that either. Like the way these SEC fans live and breathe the off-season softball recruiting, because their team finished 6th in the SEC last year. Like that, I think, is going to be more of an awakening for the Longhorns than anything else, is just the sheer fanaticism that exists in the SEC. And maybe they can get there on that level with a few years experience. But, UT fans, nobody's nice to them. They know what they get when they go into a road environment. But I think that's going to be the very interesting awakening when the season starts here in a couple weeks. Yeah,
I do. There's going to be a time where they try to pull out the old fastball of like, no, we're Texas and this is what we want. And I can't, I would just die to just be in that meeting when it's like, okay, kids, look, I know how it was for you forever, but none of us care.
No.
Not like Vanderbilt's even like, we don't care. We don't care. We don't care. And they're like, we have so much money and we have we've won more than you. And Vanderbilt's like, Cornelius Vanderbilt, like we're named after a robber baron, for God's sakes. Like, you think we have scruples? No, come on. No. I'm not knocking you, Vanderbilt, before anybody flips out. You're a fine institution, but they're not afraid. Like, that's the thing. I think that at any point from 1980 to 1990 or to about 2010, had anybody or before that stood up and said, let's stop this, and like gotten together on Texas and said, hey, you guys are just bullying everybody, it probably would be different. But they didn't until the conference almost fell apart.
Yep.
Like that, the two conferences had to, like, one had to completely fall apart, and then the other one had to get at the door to where it was like, okay, hey, we need to change this dynamic, because you try to blame everybody else for leaving, but they're all saying it's because of you. So you have to change. And to that end, I think they have a little bit, but we'll see. Like, they're going to have to change a lot in the SEC. A lot.
And I think a lot of what will have to take place will take place behind closed doors, because that's where all of this moving and shaking happened with the Pac-16 or the Pac-12 or whatever it was going to be. That was right after I left Waco and got to Austin. Like, the UT's complete disregard for anybody else in their league, it almost eliminated the Big 12. I mean, it sent Nebraska out. It sent A&M out. It almost, screwed over Texas Tech and Baylor, which would have been the Pac-12 at the time. And none of that ever came to light. I mean, there were the DeLoss Dodds comments that, we're the Joneses or whatever. But other than that, there's never been, we're Texas, we can do this. But everybody knows that's how it's taken place, because that's how it's been reported behind closed doors. So I am fascinated to see, I guess we would hear about it from the reports or whatever gets leaked out, as to what it's going to take for Texas to try and throw its proverbial weight around. Or is this the ultimate destination? Is this where they wanted to be? Still linked up with Oklahoma and even though they'll never admit it, back in a league with A&M on a level
in
playing
Arkansas.
field. Yes,
In
great
Arkansas.
point. Great point. The old Southwest Conference, and the biggest, the baddest TV contracts, the access to everything. And look, they will never say it. Longhorn Network was a burden to a lot of people there, and now that's gone away. And now it's as level of a playing field as Texas has been on in decades. I mean, since really the end of the Southwest Conference. So you make a great point with let's see how quite frankly a new era happens at UT.
DeLoss Dodds reformed the position of athletic director.
Yep.
I mean, he is to that what like Gil Brandt is to the draft, or let's say Dan Marino is to modern quarterbacking.
Mike Leach is to air raid. Yeah.
Yeah. And none of those people, like anybody I mentioned, had their mess ups and their flubs, right? His flub, like Dan Marino never won a Super Bowl, right? Mike Leach never won a conference title, but innovators nonetheless, and people who changed it, and this is slowly changed, but DeLoss Dodds is the reason that most people don't just call up an alum and that, was good at a sport that they care about and everyone knows is like, you're the athletic director now. Here's $750,000 to start. Go athletic direct. That's not how it is anymore. He changed that. His biggest flub, and you can't blame him for the swing if he sold somebody on it, but was the Longhorn Network, because they were just so in their bag about winning in 2005 and how big a deal that was to them. And like any big entity, you think, well, everybody cares about this. And you're like, well, no, college football is regional. Like, even like when people know you, they're still like, if you're in Seattle or Maine or Georgia, you might watch Texas a couple times, but you don't care about what they're doing enough to watch them on their own television network. So, and the thing is that in Texas, there's enough people who hate them enough to be like, I would never watch the Longhorn Network for any reason. There's nothing you can put on there. Even if you force me to watch, I'll begrudgingly watch it if you make my game go on there. But other than that one broadcast, I'm not watching anything else. So, and he was able to sell ESPN on this grand plan. And I just wonder if anybody in Bristol was like, I mean, everybody loves Texas. And I mean, I think their whole thing is that they really love themselves, and that's fine, but everybody else hates them, and that's not a way to sell a 24-hour-a-day television network of, hey, this team that you hate, why don't you watch them all day long?
And they, from being there, Texas always liked to put itself in the same sentence as Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. And Notre Dame, in a very similar vein, they have people that hate watch them. But Paul, the difference is Notre Dame is on for 4 hours on a Saturday or a couple Saturdays a month on NBC, not 24/7 re-racking every Olympic sport event or a game against UTRGV. That was, it just wasn't going to work. And maybe if Texas would have not gone 5-7 with Garrett Gilbert in 2010 and maybe not gone through the running Mac out and the Charlie Strong era, maybe things would have been different with the Longhorn Network, but I really don't think so. I just think it was a pie in the sky plan similar to the 3D TV that was about that same time that, it sounded good on paper, but it just didn't work. And I'm actually stunned that Longhorn Network lasted as long as it did. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of good people, a lot of friends that that work there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't their fault. They were employees of it. But that was it 100% was a burden to a lot of people in Austin.
I heard this from some of their employees about we were and the thing is, you turn it on and they were doing some good work for that. Mm-hmm. But again, I'm not interested in it. Outside of my, the football stuff, okay. I'll you know what? You want to throw on the Augie Garrido doc? I'll fire that up and watch it. That was pretty interesting. Richard Linklater did it, so it was good. Yeah. But like as far as like, oh, volleyball's on, like, well, I mean, you got to really push it for me to watch my own alma mater's volleyball game. So I, just hopping on and watching Texas versus, Oklahoma State in volleyball, that's never gonna to really do it for me. So yeah, it was such an interesting thing, and then because they had to push it, especially that early on, and I know like for a fact that Mac Brown, it wore him down in that first year where he was like, wait, what do I have to do now? And then he'd be like, do I get to talk to them and then I have to talk to them? Why can't we do all at once? Like, no, we have to have exclusive stuff. He's like, so the media stuff I was doing, I essentially have to do it twice now. So when I go do the Longhorn Network interview and I'm like, oh, we're happy with Garrett's progress and he's played better the last 2 games. And then he has to walk into a different room and go, we're happy with Garrett's progress. And it's another thing. And, oh, wait, I have to do 2 live call-in shows a week? What are we doing? Like, what? And yeah, I think it broke him a little bit, and took away a lot of his fire for that job. And I think it's also a big thing that led to, you have him doing all this stuff. Well, then that's more on his plate. And so come up with a recruiting plan. He's like, well, look, there's all these services that list these guys in numeric order of how good they are. So do that. Just get those guys. And then everybody's like, yeah, it's a good idea. That'll really simplify it for us. And then they didn't think like, oh, well, maybe this guy doesn't fit here. Or maybe he's going to come down here and find that the party atmosphere of Austin, Texas is too much fun. And coming to practice at 7 o'clock in the morning with everybody else is going to be really hard. And you're like, well, why did this guy gain 25 pounds and constantly smells like Natty Light? And you're like, well, 6th Street's right there. It's right there.
But he was
we
didn't
ask the question.
In the rankings.
Yeah, this guy probably should have gone to somewhere, a little bit more remote. Like he probably would have done better in say like a Kansas State or something where, yeah, there's a street of bars that everybody likes, but there'll be nights during the week where you won't see Willie Nelson. Like there's not like, oh, well, this is a cool thing and that'll happen, but. It's not like, oh, there's this and there's this and there's this. And, oh, look, South by Southwest is here.
Oh, no.
Let's do it. Yeah. It's still like you have to be, to those players' credit, big time athlete, especially now with NIL. I think in Austin, to really be successful and to really, you have to be more locked in cities like Austin and Miami than you do in a city like College Station. It's still hard and there's still party atmosphere, but there's a lot more distractions available to you because of what Austin has turned into and what Miami is or what, say LA is. Like the USC team's part of the reason I think they created is once they got so big, they became these like Hollywood celebrities and then you don't really want to work as hard because, oh, look, there's Katy Perry, this is cool.
And the uniqueness about Miami and Austin, unlike a lot of great college towns, all of that entertainment is not on campus. So there are ways you have to get, to that area, which obviously presents problems. And we've seen a whole bunch of that. But, you make a good point about USC and about the celebrity and, kind of feeling like you've made it. Like that was such a big thing for me when I was in Austin, is seeing that the guys who got to campus and were never developed for whatever reason, it was that, oh, I was recruited by Texas. I signed a scholarship with Texas. That was enough. And it was such a night and day coming from Waco at the time when the Baylor program had just been through the worst of the worst and had just hired Art Briles when I left to go to Austin, seeing the dichotomy between the guys that Baylor was getting then, the guys that Texas was getting then, and then seeing the complete 180 at each school because of all of the other factors. But the biggest, I think, in Austin was solely the entitlement, solely the, hey, I made it. I've got the Longhorn on the side of my helmet. Going to the Alamo Bowl. Let's toast that.
Yeah. It's funny. I think about those first days under Guy Morris, and I remember it like we would be done with everything most every day. Like unless you had to actually do the news that night, like pretty much all of us were at the bar at a reasonable time. Like we weren't waiting for anybody because, it was a noon kick It was,
Yeah.
it was not like nobody was pushing it, or if it was like, or even if it was a 6 o'clock kick, the press conferences lasted 70 seconds, because there was
like a lot of those games, they were 11 a.m. or like 2 p.m. because they weren't on television. Remember, that was the days of the TV cut. Like a lot of those games, we would have to send film to, Missouri or Nebraska because the games weren't televised because of that was the state of not only college athletics, but the Baylor football program at the time.
Yep. All right. Going to transition here because I don't want to lose any time. I do want to talk about the Houston Cougars. We have a bunch of Houston fans that watch the show, and you covered them with Dana Holgorsen. You were there at the hiring of Willie Fritz, because you've really only been out of the game for about 10 weeks now, I would say. Yep. What do you think? Like, Dana Holgorsen was, I think, a shot of adrenaline that the program needed. Like, when they hired him, they needed a coach that was willing to say, yeah, I think this is a better job than the one I have, even though it's a step down in conference, to kind of shoot that adrenaline and excitement into the program. But I do think that, I know that modern college football was just not, like, he wasn't ready to do that, especially with a team going into a new conference, dealing with the portal, dealing with NIL and all that. He wasn't ready for that, and it kind of got to him, you could tell. But Willie Fritz very much is, and he's an organizer that they need. I'm very surprised that Chris Pesman got let go, because I think he was great at his job. But again, new era, new things. I hate it for Pez because I really do like him. But ultimately, this is a new era for the Cougars. What do you think is their immediate future in the Big 12 and then long term?
I agree with you that Willie Fritz was exactly what they needed at this time, on a parallel to Dana being exactly what they needed at that time. Remember, they were coming off of having so many of their football coaches poached by programs in bigger conferences, not necessarily bigger programs, but you lose Art Briles, you lose Kevin Sumlin, you lose Tom Herman. They got Dana Holgorsen to leave a Big 12 job to come to U of H that was in the American. That was a big deal and kind of a stamp of validation that program needed to the outside, because obviously the Cougs believers knew what they had. Dana was done. I mean, his quote was, that ship has sailed, when he was talking about like recruiting high school kids, recruiting kids inside the greater Houston area. He was just so done with the state of college football, like you just said, about all of the stuff, the fundraising that goes into it, the re-recruiting the guys just to stick around that you had already recruited to get them into your program. He was over it. It showed. There was no accountability in the program. They needed somebody just like Willie Fritz to come in. The dude has been just exhausted on the recruiting trail. Like Texas and Louisiana, the two places that he knows, because those are the places he's won. Blinn, Sam Houston, Tulane, not exactly blue blood programs. He has so many connections in those areas. He's recruiting those kids. He's doing it despite trying to build his own current program. And he's not any, bells and whistles scheme guy. All he's done is win everywhere he's been, because he gets the folks to believe in what he's doing. His enthusiasm is infectious, and they probably won't be very good this year. I don't expect them to compete for the Big 12 this year, but the work that he is doing in getting the people who had been so turned off to that program the last couple of years with Dana, getting them back in to believe, getting the kids in that program to work a little bit harder, and then doing the work to get the recruits from here in Houston, from the state of Texas, from Louisiana. He's going to build this program, and it's going to be competitive in the Big 12. They're just about to finish their football facility on campus. That's going to be a game changer. The NIL is really starting to take off over there. A huge factor in that is Kelvin Sampson. I mean, what he's done with the basketball program, it's kind of the opposite of what we see with a lot of, major college college athletics programs, where the football is leading the way. Well, basketball leads the way. And what Kelvin wants, Kelvin gets. And his success, the way he's shown that they can, sustain success in the Big 12. I think he and Willie Fritz are close. I think Willie has very smartly kind of followed Kelvin, been sort of in his pocket in these first early months to figure out who to know, who to talk to, just kind of how to go about yourself in building the culture. And I think Houston's going to be in a great spot. I'm with you. I thought Chris Pesman was fantastic. I think he was exactly what they needed to make the transition into the Big 12 conference. But there were just a couple things that rubbed some people the wrong way. And it's all about money these days. And it's all about bringing in money. And I'm going to be fascinated to see who they do end up hiring. It sounds like it's going to be announced early next week. But it might be somebody outside of the college athletics realm, which this day and age tells you all you need to know about what's important. And it's not necessarily X's and O's and hiring coaches.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not going to be Jeremiah Dickey, who, is at Boise State now, was here under Mack Rhodes at Baylor, was under Mack Rhodes at UH. He's decided to stay in Boise and not surprised about that. By the way, you mentioned Kelvin Sampson. Several people in the chat, Adam, think that you look like him.
Hey, I'll take that as a compliment. The Chief's good looking. He's a good looking grandpa.
Yeah.
I think that family's phenomenal. I had a chance to spend a ton of time with Kelvin and build a relationship with him and Kellen and Lauren and Mrs. Sampson. So I will certainly take that as a compliment. The Chief's a good looking man. So don't read the comments, Paul. Don't read the comments. Right?
They asked direct questions, like Kyle Visser said. Did the softball scandal contribute to Pez getting fired? They wanted
I was told it was a factor. Okay. Two things I was told with the softball program. The extension that they gave to the softball coach for a program that has not been competitive, even in the American, was a factor. But yes, there were some very serious allegations published about some things that have gone on allegedly in the softball program. And I was told that was indeed a factor, but it was kind of just a snowball effect with a couple of bad contracts, a couple of bad extensions, and then the bottom line not being where they wanted it to be. Yeah.
I think if he wants to get back in the athletic directing game, he can do that somewhere else. He'll do a good job. Sharp guy, learn from the mistakes, kind of a thing. So another thing interesting in the media business that this just came down, Adam, I don't know if you've seen it, but Sam Ponder, RG3, got let go by ESPN in budget cuts. And RG3 is somebody who I think on TV, he's not, like, you either going to love him or you're going to be like, this guy's so goofy. Because he's it's kind of fascinating to see a guy who is like a big time super athlete that's also a gigantic, and I say this with all the love in the world because we've both known Robert since he was in high school, a dork. He's just a big dork. He's a nerd, like in the most loving way possible, but that's his whole thing. Like when you look at his social media or he's doing his podcast in front of a wall of Funko Pops, like, that's his vibe. Yeah. So, but I think he's very talented and I think he's clearly very smart. And I'm friendly with him. So I'm sure he'll get another media gig. I mean, most guys like that do. Sam Ponder, I am flabbergasted that weeks before the NFL season is about to start, you're letting go of your pregame host. That is also a former Longhorn Network person.
Yes. And RG3, I think, surprised me more than Sam because RG3 was seen as a rising star in the business. Like, you look at his growth from doing like the, DF level games of college football to being part of their NFL coverage on ESPN, ABC in just a matter of 2 years. I will say, and we're not going to make this about me, Paul, but the TV industry, especially my former employer, owned by Disney, ESPN is also under that umbrella. Money's an issue, and there were layoffs all the way down to the local TV level within the last couple of weeks. So if these are indeed budget cuts, that is terrible. And it's also a bad look mere days after shelling out billions of dollars for the new NBA contract. That's just, and if Disney doesn't have money in an election year, what does that say about the industry in 25 or 26 or 27? So I feel terrible for Sam and RG3, especially Sam, because I like, to your point, I knew her from her days back at the Longhorn Network, and she was so well liked by that pregame countdown crew. But yeah, it's a rough business, man. It's not a good state, but it's also not a good look with ESPN shelling out TV contract money and then having to cut two of their favorites.
Yeah, I think Sam is great. She also married well. Garrett, hop on the mic real quick. Yep. Super Bowl in Phoenix a couple years ago, Christian Ponder was doing interviews. And I told his runner, I said, we don't have to get anybody else in this list, but if you don't bring me Christian Ponder, we're not talking anymore. We're no longer friends. You bring me Christian Ponder. We started out talking about the NFL. Nah. We didn't end up talking about the NFL.
No.
What'd you say? It was probably about a 25 to 30-minute interview.
It was long, dude. It was about 25, 30.
They had to reschedule his next one because he was like, no, I'm here. I'm cool. We're cool.
You're just telling tally stories?
Yeah, we're just telling tally stories. And, but yeah, he even, I asked him what's it like to be an NFL quarterback and be super famous as an NFL quarterback, and then all of a sudden your wife is way more famous now than you'll ever be because she's on ESPN every day? He's like, oh, it's awesome. He's like, but it was one of those things where you're like, oh, well, the dynamic has shifted. I can maybe toil a little in anonymity here, and now she's when we go out, people are like, oh, hey, Sam, can we take a picture? And then it'll be like, you, buddy.
Yeah, they hand the phone.
Here you go. It's an all conference quarterback and first round draft pick. I know my NFL career wasn't,
I forgot he was a first rounder. Yes,
he was.
Yeah.
He was. He and Jimbo Fisher, he's part of the Jimbo Fisher quarterback run that built the legend, which was Matt Flynn. He won a national championship with Matt Flynn and Matt Mock. He got Jamarcus Russell drafted number 1 overall. Oof. He got Ponder drafted in the first round. He got E.J. Manuel drafted in the first round. And he got Jameis Winston, Jamarcus Russell and Jameis Winston number 1 overall. I think Jameis has not been given his complete fair shake. I understand there's limitations and things happen, but he is where he is. People love having him on the team. But he got 6 of those guys picked into the NFL, and 4 of them picked in the first round. And that kind of built his QB legend a little bit before, once Jameis happened, then it went very slowly. So, but Kellen Mond, I think, got in the NFL because of Jimbo, but he's not really there now. So, but yeah, that was all part of it. Yeah, the Vikings bought it, but that's their, and things didn't work out. Sometimes these guys, and I think we got to go, it's not fair. I mean, you're a Texans guy, and you've not only covered them as a fan, like I am of the Cowboys. Mm-hmm. David Carr should have been a really good NFL quarterback, but the Texans didn't do anything around him to help that.
Right.
Outside of the short time he spent with Andre Johnson, the problem is that, I say short time, but the time he spent with Andre Johnson, he'd already gotten beat up enough to where he was just so shell-shocked.
Yeah.
There are, I think, more QB busts are the fault of the teams that they go to, and player busts, the situations they wind up in, than their athletic ability. There's not you've got, especially you got a first-round draft pick, you got him for 5 years. If all 5 of those years you're awful, is it his fault? Or is it your fault? I think it's your fault.
And turning over offensive coordinators because you're firing offensive coordinators, new systems. You're exactly right. It is not always the fault of the quarterback. And yeah, David Carr's a great example. I think there's still a chalk outline of him in the turf somewhere at NRG Stadium.
Yeah, that's going to be on like one day they'll build like a new stadium and that will be repurposed, and they'll be like, this is the first place he got sacked. And then look, just 1 yard away is the last place he got sacked. If you get down close to the field, you can still see some of his blood. It's right there. Wink, so great to have you on the show. Love you, buddy. I need to get Amanda down to Houston soon, and you and me and Cornish can get together. Maybe we can get Sheik down there, our buddies. Nobody knows these people. I don't care. But yeah, we need to keep doing Mug Club reunions because it was great. A decade is too long. So we will certainly have you on the show again. And now that you're, listen, you just tell your dad and your brother, like,
hey, I got a thing with my guy Paul. No, This is awesome. Thank you for having me, Garrett. Thank you for producing this. And yeah, let's do it. Let's do it again. Let's do it again soon. And maybe we can mix in the word of the day next time. I know Cornish is gonna be disappointed.
Muskrat. There it is. Right at the end. Muskrat. Muskrat. We'll do it. No one will get that inside joke. No one will at all. But coming up on the show today, just in an hour, Smokey, Craig, and I we're full. We're very full on the show today. Adam, we've got Mike Rodak, Bama 24/7, ESPN's Max Olson, David Ubben of The Athletic, Andy Bitter covers Virginia Tech, Gary Smith from the Times-Picayune, and Mickey Spagnola, DallasCowboys.com. And my top five, which today will be,
I think it's 10 through 5.
10 through 6 of the top 25 offenses in the country. So that series continues. Adam, thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Appreciate y'all. Thank you.
All right, see you guys in an hour.